You've seen it. That little sign in the window of your local Chinese takeout, No MSG. It's been there so long, you probably never questioned why. But here's what's strange. Italian restaurants don't have those signs, neither do steakhouses or fast food chains, and yet they're all serving you MSG. So why is only one cuisine forced to apologize for an ingredient that the FDA has tested 3 times and declared completely safe? The answer starts with a single letter, not a study, not a clinical trial, just a letter. Published in the New England Journal of Medicine on April 4, 1968, and the man who wrote it, he didn't even blame MSG. Not really. He offered 3 guesses and asked his colleagues for help figuring it out. But what happened next had nothing to do with science, and everything to do with which foods Americans were already primed to distrust. To understand this story, you need to know what MSG actually is. It's not some industrial chemical dreamed up in a lab. It's a naturally occurring amino acid called glutamate. Your body makes glutamate naturally. It's in your brain right now. It's in breast milk. It's one of the most abundant amino acids in human biology. And it's in food. Lots of food. Tomatoes, mushrooms, aged cheeses. Your Parmesan has more MSG per gram than anything you'd find in a Chinese restaurant. Here's the number that matters. Parmesan cheese contains 1,200 milligrams of glutamate per 100 grams. Tomatoes have 140. And these are foods we've never questioned. In 1908, a Japanese chemist named Kikune Ikeda figured out what made dashi broth so delicious. He isolated glutamate from kombu seaweed and named the taste umami, the 5th flavor. He patented his discovery, and his company, Ajinomoto, started selling MSG as a seasoning. Within decades, it became one of the most popular food additives in the world. It wasn't controversial, not in Japan, not in China, not in Europe, not even in America at first. MSG was just another ingredient, like salt or pepper. Then came April 4, 1968. Dr. Robert Ho Man Kwok, a Chinese-American physician, sent a letter to the New England Journal of Medicine describing an odd experience. He said that after eating at Chinese restaurants, he sometimes felt numbness, weakness, and heart palpitations. He called it Chinese Restaurant Syndrome, and he listed 3 possible causes. Those 3 possibilities? Soy sauce, cooking wine, or MSG. He wasn't certain. He was asking for help. His exact words, quote, "I wonder if my friends in the medical field might be interested in seeking more information." That's it. That's the entire scientific basis for Chinese restaurant syndrome. One man's speculation, published not as a study, but in the letters section of a journal. Now here's where it gets interesting. The media didn't treat this like a question to be investigated. They treated it like a verdict that had already been delivered. Within weeks, newspapers across America ran headlines about the dangers of Chinese food. TV news segments warned viewers. The phrase Chinese restaurant syndrome entered the medical vocabulary. And the response from the scientific community? Mostly silence. Or worse, studies designed so poorly they might as well have been written for TV drama. Here's what's wild. The studies that claimed to prove MSG was dangerous, they gave subjects massive doses, sometimes 50 times what you'd ever consume in a meal. At those concentrations, nearly anything would make you feel sick. Give someone 50 tablespoons of salt and watch what happens. But the flaws didn't matter. The narrative was already set. Chinese food was dangerous, MSG was poison, and restaurants felt the pressure immediately. Chinese restaurant owners, many of them immigrants running family businesses, began putting up no MSG signs, not because the signs demanded it, because their customers did. And here's the part that stings the most. At the exact same time, Campbell's Soup was adding MSG to their products. So was Frito-Lay. So was basically everyone in the American food industry. Nobody was putting up signs in the soup aisle. Nobody was warning people about their Doritos. The ingredient wasn't the problem. The cuisine it was associated with was. But surely, you might think, surely eventually someone did a proper study. Someone ran a double-blind trial. Someone got to the bottom of this. They did. Multiple times. And the results were, well, let's just say they weren't what MSG skeptics wanted to hear. In 1991, the FDA commissioned a comprehensive review. They looked at all the existing research, every study, Every claim, every anecdote about headaches and heart palpitations. Their conclusion? MSG is generally recognized as safe, same classification as salt. Same classification as vinegar, same classification as baking powder. They tested it again in 1998, same result. No evidence that MSG causes the symptoms people reported. Not headaches, not numbness, not heart palpitations, nothing. But here's where it gets really interesting. When researchers ran double-blind studies where neither the subject nor the researcher knew who got MSG, something strange happened. People reported symptoms from MSG even when they were given a placebo. They felt headaches and dizziness from pills that contained nothing but sugar. And people who ate MSG without knowing? No symptoms at all. The reaction wasn't biological. It was psychological. The fear was the cause. Think about that for a second. People made themselves sick with their own expectations. They believed Chinese food would hurt them, and so, for them, it did. So why did Americans believe the myth so readily? Why did one speculative letter in a medical journal spark decades of discrimination against an entire cuisine? The answer has nothing to do with chemistry. It has everything to do with history. Chinese food became popular in America during a period of intense anti-Asian prejudice. The Chinese Exclusion Act, Japanese internment, the Vietnam War. For over a century, American culture had primed people to distrust anything associated with Asia. So when someone suggested that Chinese food might be making people sick, even without evidence, it confirms something many Americans already suspected. The bias wasn't new. The permission to express it through health concerns, that was the innovation. Xenophobia dressed up in a lab coat. And the impact? Devastating. Chinese restaurant owners weren't just dealing with bigotry. They were dealing with legitimized bigotry. Newspapers printed it. Scientists nodded along. Entire families who'd built businesses over generations found themselves forced to apologize, with signs in their windows for ingredients that had never hurt anyone. Meanwhile, Parmesan Reggiano continued to get exported from Italy with its 1,200 milligrams of glutamate per serving. No signs required. Doritos kept landing on supermarket shelves with MSG proudly listed in the ingredients. No warning labels, no moral panic. So, what do we do with all this? How do we start unlearning a myth that's been reinforced for over 50 years? First, it may help to recognize the pattern. Whenever a health scare targets one specific cuisine or culture while ignoring the same ingredient everywhere else, that's a red flag. Second, consider looking at the source. A letter in a journal isn't a study. A newspaper headline isn't evidence. An anecdote isn't data. And third, and this is the big one, consider supporting the restaurants and chefs who are reclaiming MSG, who refuse to apologize for their ingredients. Some chefs today are putting MSG back on their menus explicitly, not hidden, not apologized for, celebrated. And that matters. The MSG panic was never about health. It was about which stories we're willing to believe about which people. And it's time to update that story. Dr. Robert Ho Man Kwok's letter wasn't racist. It wasn't even wrong exactly. He noticed something, asked a question, and hoped his colleagues would investigate. What was wrong was everything that happened after. The way the media grabbed one possibility out of three and ran with it. The way scientists designed studies to confirm what they already believed. The way an entire industry was stigmatized while identical ingredients in other cuisines got a pass. That wasn't science. That was a cultural autopsy, performed by people who'd already decided what they'd find. If you found this useful, consider subscribing. We cover stories like this every week, digging into the real history behind the things everyone assumes are true. Chinese Restaurant Syndrome was invented, not discovered, invented by a culture that was primed to believe the worst about certain cuisines and the people who made them. The FDA says MSG is safe. The science says MSG is safe. Your Parmesan top pasta says MSG is safe. It's time we started listening. The real syndrome here isn't in the food, it's in the fear. And fear, unlike MSG, has never been FDA approved.